Keeping you updated.
This is The Agenda with Georgia Tolly
on Dubai Eye 103.8.
Now, one person here in the UAE who is hoping to add to the voice of change on that is Hind Al Mutawa, who is Director of Electricity and Energy Trade for the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure. And she joins me now on the line. It's a huge pleasure to have you join us. Hind, thank you very much indeed. How are you?
I'm okay. Thank you very much, Georgia. And thank you for the great introduction. Very inspiring. It's inspiring to hear these statistics, and we really hope for it to improve.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I spoke over you then because our line is a little bit patchy. I'm going to carry on in hope that it's going to keep on working. But I think we did lose the line ever so slightly just then. I actually felt very cross when I read those statistics. And I was reading up on the subject over the last 24 hours. And I was quite surprised at how personally passionate I felt on the subject. As the Director of the Electricity and Energy Trade area for the Ministry, what strategies have you developed to implement sustainability in the region, and what potential do you think women in the region hold if we are going to, improve one of the sustainability goals, which is actually to increase access to electricity and to improve energy efficiency?
Yeah, sure, Georgia. Before that, I just want to extend my thanks to NG being a champion of women fighting climate change, especially with wonderful panel discussion they hosted in the French Pavilion and Expo. So to answer your question, Georgia, yes, if we truly want to apply the most effective mitigation and adaptation measures with the most sustainable returns, then we absolutely should include women in the process. Women are paying high prices, especially the poor parts of the world, be it access to water supply, energy for cooking, and even food security. So there are so many challenges, and therefore the way we look into our energy system have changed, and how would it fit to the energy transition. The way we look into our electrical grid had also changed, and make it and think of ways to make it fit to the net zero that we have declared and pledged to. And that required a whole new set of skills and knowledge that we're really trying to build the capacities within our ministries and within our employees. And also, and that would definitely open new doors for creating job opportunities, which women should position themselves very effectively. It's worth mentioning that UAE ranked the first in accessing electricity, and that's definitely because of UAE strategies of adapting very versatile energy mix profile that is not just gas fired, but it also has a higher penetration of clean energy that we witnessed in the grid over the last decade, and it's yet to increase to even 50% of our energy mix by 2050. We have also the nuclear energy as part of our security, let's say, to our electricity energy mix, despite it's not really the best in terms of cost-wise, but security is a very essential element that we look as we are looking ahead and planning ahead for the net zero and future security of energy for future generations. As for the SDG and access to the affordable and reliable and sustainable and modern energy, it's definitely essential. We can see, people with no access to electricity. Millions of them still have no access to electricity around the world, or even basic cooking oil, access to basic cooking oil, leaving women and girls very vulnerable to the risk of the indoor pollution. But there is a lot of potential. I'm very optimistic about it. When we come to the look at it from a technology perspective, we can see, for example, the cost of the solar PV have dropped immensely, which makes it very affordable. And talking about UAE here, we have made a global record in the LCOE. That's the levelized cost of electricity, almost down to 1.35 cents per kilowatt hour. UAE also is investing millions in solar projects, not just led by Masdar Institute, mainly not only here within UAE, but also worldwide. So there's a lot of potential that we also anticipate from our young graduates, to solve challenges that is associated with the renewable energy, for example, the intermittencies. So But there are solutions and there are innovations that yet is waiting for women to, especially with STEM coming from STEM backgrounds, academic backgrounds, and innovation and research and storage, issues that has to do with the storage, and issues that has to do with the electrical interconnections as being one of the major tools that we are considering in our energy future security. And probably I just use.
Oh no! Sorry, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. It's always very difficult when we're not face to face to know when to ask the question. But I mean, we are very fortunate here in the UAE that access to power, access to electricity isn't a problem. But we are quite rare in the region from that perspective. Do you think here in the UAE women have had enough opportunities to help drive the race to net zero? And what do you think as women across all levels in the MENA region specifically can do to support? Because there has to be a role for women in helping other women in this region have access to clean power and regular, reliable power.
That's right, Georgia. I really believe that energy transition will happen in the MENA region at different pace, and that's depending on its energy system and its resources and natural advantages and priorities, and so does the opportunities of women being a driver in the net zero. And my point here is that to start with, government and commitment and leadership commitment to gender issues and make it inseparable from the opportunities in the net zero is very essential. Within the 18 years of my experience in the energy sector, I could witness how the sector had evolved from being an oil economy based to one that's pledged to net zero. And UAE had, of course, been always a responsible hydrocarbon producer. My point here is government empowerment is the first to anchor in the ecosystem, and then organizations across all sectors can follow. That's a very effective one that we've seen it. Me as Emirati person who's a graduate from a STEM background, I've seen the cycle, and I can see that number one reason is the government. So governments should act across the MENA region, which is happening at a different pace, and to act toward the net zero. And toward women empowerment in the transition. So
yes, it must be amazing for
UAE sets an example for that.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. We're having some troubles with the line, which is why I thought you'd paused. But let's see, are you still there? Because I've got one more question to ask you.
Yes, I'm there, Georgia.
Yes, you're still here. That's very good news. I'm so sorry. We've had a few gremlins in the system at the moment. I want to ask you about COP28 because it's happening in about a year and a half's time. It's crazy how quickly it's come around. I mean, obviously, you're a woman working in energy, and you've clearly got a close eye on other girls and women who are coming up through the system, who are studying STEM. But how can women who, like yourself, who already hold senior positions, participate in COP28 and make their voices heard? You know, if we've got students listening now and they want to get involved in COP28, how would you recommend that they can get involved?
Well, there's so many ways we can participate in COP28, and it's just not just within COP28. It's even what will stem out of the COP28, the plans, the potentials, the projects that we're working out. This is where we expect the women to position themselves. So UAE is definitely putting all their efforts to make this conference a success. A lot of ambitions that are waiting to turn it into actual plans. But for the ladies to participate in this, there are a lot of things to do. I'll just give you an example because we're just still minding the time. We can do a lot in spreading awareness and mentoring around the issue of the climate change and make it sounds like it's a one issue. It's a one issue actually. Climate change and the gender issues is a one thing. The second thing is to lead some essential projects in the net zero. And the third one, there's something that I'm very, very glad that I could talk about here, something that I've done personally. I'm a graduate of Anwar Gargash Academy for Diplomacy, that I had the chance to talk about how important it is to tie the gender parity issues to the international diplomacy, which is very important. So the journey to net zero is long and complex, Georgia. what we seek for the females to voice is not only during the COP28, but also in leading actual projects that will stem out of it. As an example, we have already started in UAE, have announced the leadership hydrogen map in COP28. As an example, that's a significant integrator in the net zero. And I myself am being part of this project, and we can see that the leadership have put a lot of trust in women as leaders for such a very important project in the net zero. And there are a lot of projects that have the same potential. We have the power markets, we have the demand side management. Energy efficiency is very essential in leading the journey toward climate change and toward the net zero. And probably I just use the chance to highlight the ministry's efforts and the national demand side management program that is addressing the challenges of consumer sectors in agriculture, in buildings, in transport, in industry. So, yeah.
I'm afraid the line is slightly cutting out as we finish this interview, but it has been absolutely fascinating. Hind Ahmed Al Mutawa, who is Director of Electricity and Energy Trade for the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure. Really interesting to find out there how our Hind, as an Emirati woman and as a senior figure in the ministry, has been participating in trying to engage women and involve women to a greater level in this conversation.